Peace and blessings to everybody. Good afternoon. It's Bugatti Gert, True Serum. Bugatti Gert, True Serum. Now, I'm going to show y'all how everything ties in together. Now, this news report I'm going to show you is from 2 months ago, with Governor Cuomo and the children were supposed to have been contracted COVID-19 and passed away. But we gonna let him talk about it.
Heartbreaking every day. 226 deaths.
Let me get my disclaimer. Any video I use is for awareness and educational purposes only. I need the Fair Use Act.
226 families. And you see how that number has been infuriatingly constant. 226 is where we were 5 days ago. We had thought initially, and again, so many of what the initial information we had turned out not to be correct or turned out to be modified. But we were laboring under the impression that young people were not affected by COVID-19. And that was actually good news, right? The vulnerable populations were older people, people with comorbidities. But the one of the few rays of good news was young people weren't affected. We're not so sure that that is the fact anymore. Toddler, elementary school children are presenting symptoms similar to Kawasaki disease or toxic shock-like syndrome. Now,
okay, that's what he just said, right? He didn't say nothing about COVID at all. These kids are experiencing something totally different. We're going to let them keep talking.
These are children who come in who don't present the symptoms that we normally are familiar with COVID. It's not a respiratory illness. They're not in respiratory distress. And I think that's one of the reasons why this may be getting discovered this far into the process. It's more an inflammation.
We're going to listen at him again. Let's listen at him again.
Few rays of good news was young people weren't affected. We're not so sure that that is the fact anymore. Toddler, elementary school children are presenting symptoms similar to Kawasaki disease or toxic shock-like syndrome. Now, these are children who come in who don't present the symptoms that we normally are familiar with COVID. It's not a respiratory illness,
not
respiratory distress.
Not respiratory distress.
And I think that's one of the reasons why this may be getting discovered this far into the process. It's more an inflammation of the blood vessels.
Now, he's just said that they're experiencing nothing that's respiratory with the kids, right? They're experiencing nothing that's respiratory with the kids, right? COVID-19 is supposed to be a respiratory disease. But these kids are not experiencing nothing respiratory. But they're still going to link it to COVID,
which can then cause problems with their heart. And there are 73 cases that the Department of Health, Dr. Zucker, is now studying. But the illness has taken the lives of 3 young New Yorkers. So this is new, and it's developing. The Department of Health has communicated with the federal officials, the CDC, and the CDC has asked New York to develop national criteria for this so that other states, other hospital systems can also be checking into this and looking into this. Again,
what he just said, listen at him right here, it's very important.
taken the lives of 3 young New Yorkers. So this is new, and it's developing.
It's new. It's developing.
The Department of Health has communicated with the federal officials, the CDC,
The
and
CDC.
the CDC has asked New York to develop national criteria for this.
The CDC has asked New York. They supposed to be leading. They asked New York to develop a national criteria. So what they're saying here is that New York is the model that the agenda want to use to accomplish this coronavirus. New York is the leading state for pushing the vaccine. Let's go.
So that other states, other hospital systems can also be checking into this and looking into this. Again, as it turns out, these children happen to have the COVID antibodies or be positive for COVID, but those were not the symptoms they showed when they came in to the hospital system.
Exactly.
So it's still very much.
Listen,
Again,
he has to tell the
as
truth.
it turns out, these children happen to have the COVID antibodies or be positive for COVID, but those were not the symptoms they showed when they came in to the hospital system.
Well,
So
those are not the symptoms when he came into the hospital. So where you going with all this? Where you going with all this? And I'm getting there in a minute because I've always said that if COVID is so dangerous to those with compromised immune systems and underlying health problems, then why babies and toddlers that have weak immune systems are not dying from COVID? I mean, you have to be able to explain that. If COVID deals with respiratory in your immune system and babies have one of the most fragile immune systems when they're born, why haven't COVID been killing kids in massive numbers? And it's just common sense. Now, this is where the curveball comes in at. This is where the curveball comes in at. Because now, they are starting to throw kids in the mix. And they're going to use the kids to provoke the vaccine. This is the curveball. This is the tipping point. Why are they going to use kids? Because kids are emotional triggers. And the majority of us, most of us, loving parents, just loving people, we know their kids are innocent, and it compels us to act on matters quicker when it involves mistreatment of children and the suffering of kids. And those at the top have let these kids down as well as those in the middle and those at the bottom. And we know this by all the trafficking and pedophilia that's coming to the light. But if you ever notice, when they show you pictures of these kids, they also going to show you pictures of the kids in the hospital, hooked to IVs, hooked to respirators. Why? Because the image of that draws a reaction, and it should. Because none of us should want to see kids suffering in any form or fashion. And it draws a natural human response. So you're going to always see photos of these kids in hospitals hooked to respirators, or you're always going to see photos of kids that's malnutrition when they're telling you that, hey, you need to donate money to feed these kids. Those are the photos you're going to see because that what brings the outcome of what they're trying to do. So once again, you're going to see how these people are constantly using children for political gain. The curveball. Now, you just was listening that Governor Cuomo, in his own words, describe in his own words describe that 3 kids with these respiratory infections, with these non-respiratory infections, this new developing Kawasaki syndrome, a disease, but it's linked to COVID, right? That was just 2 months ago. He said this, right? Okay, now watch what he does now. Watch what he says.
Parents have to trust you when you have their kids.
Where there are new concerns about safety after dozens of students and staffers tested positive for coronavirus in just the first few days. Teachers are concerned.
Go back.
The way for all schools to reopen for in-person learning if they choose, including the country's largest school district, New York City.
Today is the deadline to look at the infection rates and make a determination. By our infection rates, all school districts can open. Everywhere in the state, every region is below the threshold that we established.
New York was once one of the highest risk states in the nation, but now...
Repeat this. Listen at it.
Cuomo clearing the way for all schools to reopen for in-person learning if they choose, including the country's largest school district, New York City.
Today is the deadline to look at the infection rates and make a determination.
There's a deadline.
By our infection rates, all school districts can open.
Decision to make.
Everywhere in the state, every region is below the threshold that we established.
New York was once one of the highest risk states in the nation, but now the COVID test positivity rate has...
Now, you remember when he was talking about it, he also let you know that the CDC wanted New York to be a model for the rest of the country, okay? So I'm showing you how this is coming in fruition today, how the agenda was set 2 months ago. How this agenda was set 2 months ago for what stage is about to take place right now. What's going on right now is New York, like I say, is the leading state that's going to carry forth the vaccine agenda. And like Governor Cuomo said, the CDC has told him they wanted them to be leaders in it. Now, if only 3 kids died from this, think, if only 3 kids died from this, okay, then they felt the need to get ahead with this and try to prevent this from happening. But you can't, because you can't prevent the virus. So you cannot prevent that from happening, but I want to show you right now, and I'm going to show you how everything just ties in. Now, he just stated that they're opening up for schools, right? But after that, 2 months ago, wouldn't we want to be protecting the kids? And we supposed to be not sending them to a war zone? But it's all part of the agenda. The kids are going to go back to school. They're going to test for the coronavirus. In some cases, they already tested and found it in schools, but they're going to test for the coronavirus. More kids going to have it. More kids going to die, which is sad and pitiful. More kids going to develop the Kawasaki. And that's going to put the parents into complete, total stress. Because as a parent, you're looking at your child and you don't want your child to be able to die from this, even though it has a 0.25 mortality rate. if the media starts pushing that these kids are dying from COVID-19, that is the tipping point, and that is the curveball, and that is what I've been saying from the get-go. And they're about to start using the kids for this. And one way to infect the children is to get the children around other kids that's infected. So then they're going to have to close the school back down. Like I said, they're going to test, they're going to find it, and more kids are going to die from that. You got to understand the times. Right now, it's a real sensitive time right now, because the world is finally waking up in mass numbers to how kids are being exploited, being molested, being trafficked, being tortured, and kids are at the forefront. So you add in a virus mixed in with all of that, and because of the safety and the well-being that a parent wants to exhibit for their kids, parents are gonna accept the vaccine, even accept it within themselves, because they don't want to be the reason that their kids get sick. So the kids will become a control mechanism for this vaccination. It's coming. It's coming. You know, the media will do their part to exploit it as much as possible. Governor Cuomo, he's opening back up the schools. So I'm watching this. I say, people, get ready, be ready. Educate your kids at home. If you can, get a relative to try to educate them. Right now, nothing to my knowledge even say that these schools are safe. Have these schools been cleaned, sanitized? You know, how you gonna go about doing that? Have any of your parents asked this before sending your kids to school? And who is liable if my kid catches COVID-19? Who is liable? Who gonna assume liability for that? Parents, you need to be asking this. Anybody that's in charge of your kids' education system, you need some answers. They just can't be reopening. I mean, how did they start to reopen it? I mean, what company was used to clean and sanitize? You need to know all of this. I strongly believe that they will also that the vaccination will be offered to kids for free. That schools will be able to administer this vaccination. I truly believe that will be it. Because the concern is that, hey, we got to get back in the classrooms. We got to get our kids back in the classrooms, right? And make sure kids not infecting other kids, they have to be vaccinated. Make sure the teachers not infecting the kids, they should be vaccinated. Make sure the parents not. So you see the domino effect. And like I say, I strongly believe once the kids get involved into this virus and the death number goes up in cases in kids, that is going to be the tipping point that the agenda needs to push this vaccination. I ask my people to keep educating yourself, keep thinking. This is a thinking man's game. This is chess, not checkers. And y'all just educate yourself, research. Take care of yourself. Peace and blessings. Educate yourself, educate your kids, educate your community. We gonna stand as one. And this is Bugatti Gert. True Serum. I'm out.